welcome to Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. In focus this week is the Air India fiasco, famously now branded as P-Gate. Much has been written and said about what transpired on that fateful Air India flight on the 26th of November from New York to Delhi. It is no secret that the AI crew flouted every single protocol, but what's even more astonishing is the way the Air India management has dealt with this crisis. It's not breaking news when I say that Air India does not enjoy much of a reputation in the first place. But yes, post the Tata takeover, expectations of a makeover were on the anvil. But alas, this distasteful incident has left a very bad taste in our collective mouths. Today on the show, my expert panel will dissect how this abominable incident was handled, what should have been done, and how brands living in the era of social media need to handle crises. And with that, let me introduce to you my panel. First up, Captain Gopinath, founder Air Deccan; Dilip Cherian, founder Perfect Relations; Santosh Desai, social commentator and columnist; Harish Bijoor, business and brand strategy consultant; and last but not the least, Sidharth Rao, founder of Web Chutney. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Truly a pleasure having you on the show. I'm going to start with you, Captain, as you've founded an airline. You know the protocols. You've probably handled a lot of crises in the past. What was most shocking in this incident in terms of not what transpired, because that much has been said, but just how the Air India management handled this?
Yeah, I think, of course, stuff happens, things happen. The question is, how do you react to that? And I think there are two parts there. One is the crew, which totally bungled, insensitive, unforgivable, because whatever we have known now from even eyewitnesses, the lady on whom this guy went and eased himself, requested for another seat. She was not given another seat, even though there was a seat. So it's totally, beyond one's understanding how the captain could have behaved in the manner, going by whatever reports we have heard. But I think more than that, I think what is shocking, and I think what for me seems, again, not acceptable, not forgivable, even in these cases. How did the Tata management and the Air India management, react to this? Because this lady who was a victim wrote a letter. She's an old lady. She wrote a letter to the chairman of Air India, who is also coincidentally the chairman of Tata Sons. So for a month, they did not react. And now we learned that there was one more incident of another person peeing another woman passenger in another flight. And for a month, they did not react at all. And finally, there have been a lot of defensive statements, justifications, a very, very bureaucratic response, full of bureaucratic jargon that we are distressed and we share the anguish and all that. But I think what I expected should have been done, and the right thing to do is not PR. You don't need PR. You don't need smart PR to manage something that has been so horrendously obvious to anybody, even a person who doesn't travel in an airline. If somebody pees on you on a bus, it's not acceptable. So I felt the right thing would have been to call a press conference when the email was received, suo moto, take recognition, and publicly apologize to the lady, and then to the public and the future passengers to build confidence. Because, let's also not, belittle, because the Tatas are the most admired company in this country. They have been through some crisis now and then, but it is the most admired company on every aspect of business, on ethics especially. And they are in the hospitality business. So it is shocking that they did not react. And still, I think a public apology has not come. It is mostly in terms of euphemisms, like, we regret and those kind of things. The chairman of Tata Sons should have come along with the CEO of Air India and apologized unconditionally, so that the right message would go, and also suspend the crew, especially the captain, and order an inquiry, and maybe make it an impartial inquiry to get somebody from outside. Because how do you rebuild the trust of Air India? Because Air India was snatched when it was an enchanting princess by the government when J.R.D. Tata ran it. And if you were an air hostess, you were like an apsara in the air, which is unattainable, And if you're a pilot, you are the most sought after bachelor. But when they got it back, it came back decrepit, moth-eaten, with shabby aircrafts, cancellations. So there was a great cheer when Air India was taken over by the Tatas, because the country needed a big competition for monopoly tendencies. And everybody felt that it would be good for the country, good for the customers. And Tatas would do what JRD did, though it was almost a great insurmountable challenge, because they were overstaffed, dowdy crew,
Right.
Everything was wrong with Air India.
Absolutely.
So therefore, it's a big disappointment. And I really don't know whether Tatas are up to the job now, because they're themselves behaving like a large government.
Point well noted. Let me take you to the brand strategists. Santosh, we've in my discussion of several panels where different brands have had crises. Most of you have been a regular participant, so this is yet another. But are you shocked by the fact that this is the Tatas, this is Air India? The crisis has happened, but just the tackling of it. I mean, or is it something that we will see repeatedly, and the public memory will be short, and we will continue with life after a few weeks?
No, I think this I think goes beyond the usual crises that we've seen, and we've seen enough crises in the past. We've also seen airlines actually go through crises, so it's by itself it's not new, but this is particularly callous. I mean, this is an event. It's not anything ordinary. It's one human being urinating on another who's an elderly lady. I mean, this is not your run-of-the-mill callousness, or the fact somebody missing flights, or service not being available. It's none of those. It at a very human level, the act of this kind of debasement of another human being goes beyond the pales of what is conceivable. I mean, this is not even conceivable outside an aircraft. I mean, nobody hears of this. This is not, even in terms of the worst crimes that you hear about, and you hear about horrendous crimes, you still don't hear about this. So this goes, this is something, when you hear of it the first time, it is utterly shocking. And at a human level, forget an organization, forget a service organization, forget Air India, forget Tatas, forget all of these things. Just at a purely human level, this is just deeply repellent and disgusting. And for the crew, as Captain Gopinath has so comprehensively pointed out, but for the crew not to be moved at a human level and do whatever possible to make a go by and sit on that same seat is just, it's beyond imagination. And all of the sequence of events, see, it looks like to me that, it was suppressed because it felt as if the moment had been handled, so to speak. And nothing happened for a month. Nobody spoke about it. To me, that silence actually is the most damning. The fact that an organization which knows something this horrendous has happened in a world of social media, for you to have the naivete to believe that something like this would eventually not, come out, and for you to believe that this has got handled and to keep quiet about it, and to pretend that nothing happened, I just think that this is so. Given the fact that this is the Tatas, this is particularly shocking. And I think it raises questions of various kinds of, and it's like a bureaucratic industrial companies. It's almost like somebody who is not used to service, somebody who feels inept in a digital age. I think there are lots of questions I think it throws up about the brand. None of them desirable considering the fact that you've taken over a decrepit Air India. You want people to believe that, things have turned around. And then this most privative act of debasement takes place, and you sit by and watch. And you have no response worth the name at all. I mean, I think that this is a failure, and which is the reason why I don't think this is one of those things. My personal belief is that crises come easily in the digital age and they go easily because the news cycle shifts. But the moment something becomes a meme, the moment something becomes a joke, apart from being horrendous, it's like something will remember forever. There will be jokes made 1 year from now by somebody getting into an Air India flight saying, hope, like there was a joke on the other day on social media that I'm not wearing a raincoat, and I've come to an Air India flight. It will remain. This is the kind of, particularly scatological stuff, the world loves fart jokes, at one level. This act of somebody, P-gate is not going away in a hurry. And so I think this is something that, they'll have to really struggle to get past.
You're in agreement, Dilip, with this? That this is going to remain, it's going to take them a while to recover from this. And as somebody who consults managements on how to behave during a crisis, what happened here according to you?
Sonali, I completely agree with what was just said. Scatological jokes which turn into memes stay forever, especially in the minds of the young. So what Santosh mentioned is horrendously true. And as management, the answer is not what Tata's is doing just now, which is issuing apologies and then at an arm's length issuing excuses. Today's excuse that's been trotted out is that Air India's crew are under a 1 year, no change in regulations rule. Now, that is kind of distancing yourself from the problem. As Captain Gopinath said, an outright apology from the very top is the very least that would be expected in this kind of situation. Secondly, the fact that now this is, in a sense, embedded into public memory means that if management wants to distance itself from this, they will have to work publicly and very hard to make sure that checks are put into place and there is immediate rectification of the line of command, which seems to have been either non-existent or flouted in the case of allotment of seats. Now, we all know that Air India has suffered over the years of government control from passengers who are entitled being bumped up, but the reverse, that when a crisis of this kind happens, you don't have the authority at the air hostess, steward, or pilot level to immediately rectify it without any questions being asked is shocking. So all these things have to be corrected. The righting has to happen. The righting of the ship, which is close to a mess at the moment, needs to be done publicly. And Air India and Tata's, as the main shareholder today, need to take public responsibility for saying, we're going to turn this around. This will not happen again, not on my watch. So these messages have to happen. They haven't happened yet. Instead, you're getting pathetic excuses. You're getting milky kind of comments. And one does know that in terms of both the digital era as well as the minds of the young, these things have become almost, as it were, equal to Air India and what it means. So I think that there's a long way to be traveled, and it will take at least a year to get rid of this, but no action has begun yet. That's what shocks me. And the fact that you have people wanting to take this leave me alone and this will go attitude, which is what triggered this in the first place, to believe that this was going to be brushed under the carpet by a forced encounter mid-air of the perpetrator as well as the victim, all reeks of poor management of the staff and poor briefing of what needs to be done in an airline. Look, Air India wasn't like this. Air India has been reduced to this, as we all know. But with almost 1 year having gone by, the Tatas ought to have had their act together by now.
Sure. Harish, what should have they done, according to you? If, let's say, this happened, unfortunate incident, the crew also, mismanaged the situation completely, lack of ethics completely. But now that the management knew, what should they have done?
See, firstly, I think the brand hurt is deep. It is not a scar, it is a gash. And this gash is going nowhere for a while because it's a sensorial gash. A gash which, whenever I think of Seagate, I mean, there is a smell to it, there is a sound to it, there's literally every sensory item that hits you. Now, what should have been done? I think one of the first tenets of handling a crisis completely is transparency. One of the important things is to accept what has happened, not to deny it. The second point is not try to brush it under the carpet. The third thing is not to try and negotiate with the perpetrator and the person who it has been perpetrated upon. So this, a crisis of any kind, one of the first things is transparency. Call it out. Say it the way it is. Attain a neutral position as far as you're concerned as a brand. That's the first thing. The second thing that needs to be done is, expose the kind of humanity or the humane manner in which the entire thing was tackled. I think somebody did speak just now about the fact that, responsibility was abdicated. Bureaucraties came in the sense that the captain should have handled this. At the end of the day, the captain should have been much more humane, shown a lot more humanity. Possibly the crew could not do it because of the fact that they're not authorized to do it. And so at the end of it, I think the first thing to do is be quick. You have to be very, very quick because a crisis has to be managed the moment it happens. The second thing is be honest about it. Where is the honesty is my question. The third is be human about it because at the end of the day, every business is a human-to-human business. An airline is more so. And the fourth is be real. Say it the way it is. Now, this could have happened to any airline. And the key question to ask is, if this had happened on an Emirates flight, how would it have been handled? Question. If it had happened on an Air France, what could you expect? If it happened on an Indigo, what could you expect? If it happened on a Vistara, what could you expect? That tells you the kind of ability of an airline, the kind of training that you see within an airline, the kind of an ability to crisis manage within an airline. The key fact is this, that at the end of the day, we are all talking in hindsight. Our vision is so perfect. This could happen to any airline. But how would they have managed? And how did Air India manage it? I think Air India did not manage it the way it should have managed it. And I think that's the key issue that's coming up in every meme. And I think in everything that we're talking about today.
Sidharth, let's talk about how they should have handled it on social media. Now, everyone here has said that they should have tackled it, been honest. Would you suggest that they had put out an apology saying that we are also disgusted by this incident? We are ashamed of ourselves. Would that have been better? Just like, eons ago when there was a Cadbury crisis, the CEO came on air and apologized and then had followed up with an Amitabh Bachchan commercial, which we all remember. Should they have done something like that on social media, which is so harsh in any case?
Yeah, so Lali, I think the other panelists also mentioned it. I think every business and their employees, and this is not just pertaining to the services business, needs to understand that in the era of social media, brushing a serious incident under the carpet is almost a zero possibility event, right? And there needs to be, I hate to say it, but the standardized response SOP or whatever for this, right? The second is, you give the benefit of doubt to the crew. Not sure whether the staff was really empowered to make those decisions. I think Captain made a point about whether they were empowered enough because, Air India was formerly a, company run by bureaucrats, whether they could do that upgrade or not. Sorry, Captain, you saying?
No, what I meant was that the Air India crews screwed it up, thoroughly screwed it up. But the manuals and the standard operating procedures all over the world is very clear. Yeah. The captain, the buck stops with him on a mid-flight. Any crisis, any kind of situation, he has all the powers. He could have had the offender, restrained by tying up with ropes if required. And he had all the power and authority to upgrade the passenger to any seat that is available there. So he, nobody will question him in any airline, unless, there was a malafide, intent. So the fact is that I think sometimes, these guys who become captains, they think they're God's gift to mankind, and there's arrogance, So that is what I was trying to say, that it is unforgivable on the part of the captain. If captain was told by the air hostess, because that's what we hear, the air hostess when it asked whether he can be shifted to a first class seat, and she came back and said the captain is not agreeing to that. So that is absolutely, horrendous and shameful.
Absolutely. But, my point is, Sidharth, let's assume it has all happened, taken place, and now it has come to the management's notice. How do you handle it on social media, where that if you don't tackle it, you are going to be the victim? At least if you take some control of the narrative, you can minimize it.
No, Sonali, so, I think everyone else also sort of echoed the same sentiment, right? A really sincere, Campbell Wilson and Mr. Chandrasekhan apologize, but a real sincere apology will go a long way to avoid continued embarrassment. And like Santosh said,
those apologies are very lukewarm, and they weren't really apologies actually.
I agree, fully agree. And, they'll continue to get embarrassed. Like Santosh said, anything becomes a meme, it's going to stick for longer, and, it's also a way to avoid lawsuits and, and it's actually a very economical way to improve customer relations, to be honest, right? If you're just very sincere about it. And, it's happened, airlines and any hospitality business particularly, they've been subject, right, to these kind of things, not of this magnitude, of course. But if you remember, 2017, Indigo had an incident of a ground staff manhandling a customer and so on and so forth. I think what the overall industry needs to do is really have a playbook in hand, which one, of course, empowers staff, sensitizes crew, and so on and so forth, but also have a great response mechanism system, right, for such incidents.
Sure. Santosh, let's take this forward. March 2023, Tata Sons claims that they will get full control of the Air India, manage Air India protocols, and they can actually change things around. Till then, their hands are tied. That's today's news. My point is, they've bought it. They're going to re-energize this brand. How will it play out? You've just gone through such a big crisis where you're looking like an, complete fool, and then you'll put out a rebranding images, which will probably also become a joke, given what's happened. So how do you deal with this?
No, I think that's what makes it really difficult. I think there were news, I don't know if it's confirmed or not, that they were in fact thinking of consolidating all the brands under Air India, which means you let go of a brand like Vistara, which is on very good footing, and you replace it with Air India, which as it is was hardly sort of, a baked in sort of glory. And now it has the stench of urine all over it. And now that's what you're stuck with. You have been working, tirelessly to create this new branding, sort of a whole story and a narrative. And just as you're about to get the brand and able to execute it, you are hit with this. That means the whole effort is in a shambles. I mean, it would be in shambles right now. And I think it's perhaps worthwhile for them to think about first trying to repair this damage before actually trying to embark on anything new. Because I think, at least in terms of outward communication, I think right now the focus should be on inward action and not on trying to consolidate the brand or communicate outwardly. Because I think if they don't get that right, if they don't get their internal protocols right, if they don't develop an orientation, I think there are so many things to get right. From internal sort of protocol responses to the how between the crew and management, how does communication take place? The management, how does it respond? How do you move from an old world response of PR-led? I mean, a small thing in the chairman's letter In the end, it says if you want to speak to anybody, reach out to, and those are corporate com kind of names. It's just it's a very small thing, but it's so telling of the orientation and the mindset. It's still an old world mindset, believing you can control the narrative through intermediaries. And that just doesn't, it's just not how it works. So I think you have to get those things right. The external communication will, in my view, need to wait. Getting all that going right now and trying to do that could be quite disastrous because, like you said, it could well become a joke.
Okay. Captain, how do you see this entire rebranding takeover of Tata's happening? Do you think
No.
they've got themselves into a big mess?
No, I'm saying even without this incident, when Tata's took over, see, it was a moribund organization. It was moth-eaten and totally decrepit. So when you take over that, you need to galvanize that organization into electric shocks, and you didn't see that. 1 year. They took 1 year to appoint a CEO who was appointed. A Turkish Airlines CEO was appointed. Then there was a attack on them that they got a guy from a Muslim country who was against India. So they should have stuck to it and ensured that he was there. Then so that guy did not join. Then they got another guy from Singapore Airlines. I'm saying the whole way they've gone about it has been very, 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 very slow, and it didn't give an impression that they're really taking charge. They were also moving like the garment. And the second thing is, changing the, let's say fixing the engine, the cabins, refurbishing the aircraft, liveries and uniforms and branding. I mean, these are easier than fixing the culture of an organization. You need deep training and a deep transformation of the culture. That takes time, and that is not easily done. And now it is worse. But I think the other point I want to make is, even if there's no social media, but when as a CEO of a company or the chairman of a company, especially when you have a chairman of Tata's, when you come to know that such a thing has happened, even if there's no social media, I think you need to come up, call a press conference and apologize. That is the best way of building a brand. Just say sorry, and that's also the right way to get a message internally, that if the chairman has said sorry to the country, sorry to that lady, and immediately suspend that pilot and get an outside person to be on the panel to investigate what happened, because everybody knows that the captain has all the authority, every authority all over the world. The captain decides matter on a ship and on an airplane. So everything that they were doing in the last 1 year after they took over, and everything that they are doing now doesn't give that confidence. And I hope they wake up to this.
Dilip, would you have suggested this if this was you were advising them? Please call for a press conference and have the top management apologize and send that message across. Do you think that's the right way to do it? Would you have advised that?
I would certainly have advised that immediate action the moment the letter got to the chairman. Hiding is not the answer. I wouldn't go as far as Japanese corporations and advise seppuku, but the idea is that you want a public, visible, and genuine. Sidharth used that word many times, that it's got to be authentic. Today, in the age of social media, and we can't wish that away, authenticity has three aspects. One is being seen and visible. Second, it has to be intense. And the third, it has to be repeated. So you cannot run away from this. You should have faced it, and you cannot try and put corporate comms or somebody else in charge. The first thing that we do when we deal with crisis is that it is at the CEO's office. It does not belong in the CMO or the CTO or COO's office. It is the chairman's job. And ownership has to take accountability for this. There is no point saying, oh, we will only take full charge of all HR practices after March 23. All that no one is willing to believe. That is not what customers are flying Air India for. The entire country has watched this transition, and I would have advised the chairman of Tata's to come out, apologize for it, and do that not necessarily in a press conference, but at least in a video message, which he sent to employees, which then got leaked. That would have been the right way to do it.
Harish, do you think the business of Air India will be drastically impacted, or do you think we are still price sensitive and we don't care and we'll carry on?
See, firstly, there is reality and then there is fantasy. And I think the reality is that people look for prices, people look for connectivity, people look to connect from one point to another at an economical price. And Air India actually rules in that space. And particularly the connectivity to India that you really talk about from X number of destinations, that's a big thing that Air India has. That does not underscore the fact that this disaster has actually created a negative stink for Air India. It has. But the point is, when a brand is down, like Air India is down now, it'll get beaten. It'll get progressively beaten for a period of time. But then, people will tire of beating the brand down as well. And the truth is, at the end of the day, even this shall pass. But that doesn't mean that you must not anticipate the next crisis. That does not mean that this is the way to handle a crisis. The point is that it takes time for things to heal. Even this shall heal. It's a gash, but even the gash shall heal. But extremely critical for Air India to relook at the way in which it's going to brand. I know its branding is ready. Extremely critical to pull it all back. Change the timeframes in which the new branding is actually going to hit the market. Let things cool down. Let things actually, let social media satiate its complete appetite on the entire issue that we're talking about. And the truth is that the next crisis happens and people move on to the next one. And as that happens, I think Air India needs to really think of coming out and saying, I'm sorry. Maybe full page ads out there which says, I'm sorry. That's all. Air India, Maharaja, why not? Tata as well.
Yeah, that would be bold if they did that. Maybe they should hear this conversation. Sidharth, you think that you think what he's saying will work, that these two shall pass and they need to just keep silent for some time and let people play out all their angst against the brand?
So like I said, right, especially in the services business, I've built one, a much smaller, sort of a thing, especially in this hospitality, travel, whatever, right? There will be screw ups. They've happened with OTAs, they've happened with airlines, they've happened with hotels, customers being disappointed. The incident is not even a comparable one, but I'm saying, and on social media, people have a field day. These things happen. I think of course, a sincere apology, even like Dilip said, even if it's not a press conference, but it's a sincere apology on social media or to employees which gets leaked, whatever form, right? This is, I was actually, before this discussion, I was just researching a bit. Every major North American airline has been through, some crisis of sorts, right? Kids getting, manhandled, infants, in fact, because they have this whole overbooked flights issue and, all of that jazz. So, airlines have been through enough number of crises. Sincerely just coming out, the CEOs, the chairmen coming out and apologizing, saying that we will make sure this never happens again and forgive us, and so on and so forth, will go a long way, right? Whether it's full page ads or social media or some internal comms that comes out.
Right. Last thoughts from you, Santosh, before we close, in terms of different aspects that this particular case will have to endure. I'm not only to, and also, I want all of you as a closing note to tell me what should brands take away from this particular case. Santosh?
Yeah, so I think everyone has said this, but I think is an instant response, I think, is important. And the fact that, and honesty, I think also people have talked about honesty and sincerity and authenticity, but I think it essentially means that you must convey at a human level your own outrage. I think you need to personalize this in some senses. On social media, if you speak as an individual and not as a CEO or not as a corporate figure, I think what really connects is if you are speaking individual to individual, because that is the nature of the medium. If you speak individual to individual, you personalize it, I think the apology works. But I think the most important thing is the fact that you respond immediately and you respond honestly. I think that's the lesson that brands have to, and you can't hide. Don't even try.
Okay. Captain?
Yeah, I think pretty much everybody has covered it. It's like Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And so these things will happen. Stuff happens. But one is the aspect of the top management, in this case, the chairman of Tata's and the CEO. Because we know, for example, in some other airlines in the US, in JetBlue, when there was a crisis of the snowstorms, the CEO was the founder, David Neeleman. He made some insensitive comments. He was the founder. He was also the shareholder. Then the pressure was so much from the board itself. The CEO stepped down. So what I'm saying is that is one aspect of managing this. I don't think we need. Of course, you need brand experts to advise as to how to rebuild the brand. That's one aspect. But right now, I think more than PR, what is required is just sincerity. Contrition. Be genuinely remorseful, and apologize. Say and seek forgiveness. Say forgive us. Then also, you have to work in transforming the culture, because you have a huge organization which is overstaffed, which is completely shabby and broken. So the hardware is easy to fix, but the soft aspects of getting the service excellence and the sensitivity to customer service, all that will take a long time, but they have to work at it. Nothing is impossible. They have to work at it and bring about a deep cultural transformation. And that should start yesterday. And I think they'll eventually win the people back if they do it.
Important point brought up by him. Do you think that the CEO should be asked to resign, given the fact that the management also has been quite lackadaisical in its response time? Dilip?
When I said Sopoco, I meant that, but that is something that the Tatas would have to take into account. But the most important thing to remember is that the higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. So because of where Tata's is, this entire opprobrium is a result of the high standing that Tata has in the public mind. Therefore, the harder the fall. But to ensure against that, to make sure that the damage is reduced, you certainly need to appoint a point person in the chairman's office who is going to be responsible for Air India going forward. You need to have an ombudsman who is going to be, she or he is going to be the whistleblower when there is a crisis in the future. As everybody has said, this is not going to be the last crisis. This is not the first crisis. So you need to prepare for what's going to be ahead. And when you're going to a rebranding exercise, which I advise should be postponed by at least a quarter, that is the time to make all these announcements together to show that rebranding is not just a cosmetic exercise, but one that is both realistic as well as sensitive to the needs of tomorrow's customers.
Well, Harish?
Well, my last word on this would be call it out as it happens. That's the first rule. Immediacy is a big one. The second point, as a closing point, would be a human being. A corporate enterprise or a brand cannot imagine itself to be inanimate. Imagine you're a human being and you're reacting to an event that happened, either to imagine that this happened to you on a flight, or imagine it happened to your spouse of either sex on a flight. So only then, I think if you can put that kind of passion into it, you'll be quick, you'll be honest, you'll be straightforward, you'll be transparent.
Well, on that note, gentlemen, thank you so much. Air India's tagline is your palace in the sky. I think It has miles and miles and miles to walk before it reaches, true to its tagline. But having said that, thank you so much. This has been a mess. And I think we've got a lot of international press also about how Indians are the most unruly passengers, unfortunately. So there has been wider repercussions. We already face quite a bad reputation when we travel abroad. This has heightened it. So I think we should all take cognizance and hopefully keep the beating on so that, next time we don't come to a situation like this. But thank you so much. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. Truly a pleasure.